I can tell you I've had my fill of warfare over the many years, but, well, I shall take you back, well, when I was but a young lad in my 20s. Now, I was most anxious to take his letter back to the governor. Saint-Pierre, of course, had other ideas. He wished to delay us as much as possible. And so he began to ply the Indians with gifts such as guns, etc., if they would but remain a few days longer. And then he played his ultimate card, liquor. Fortunately, this time, Talent Harrison and company abstained. He would have liked nothing more, of course, to separate us from our Indian allies. Joncaire himself had considerable Indian blood running through his veins, and I did not trust his wiles upon our Indian friends. But finally, we were on our way. First by canoe, I had sent some of our party with the baggage ahead. But when we met them to continue our journey by land, I discovered the horses were quite worn, and I was very, very concerned that we needed to move quickly. So I suggested to Mr. Gist that he and I don the garb of the Indian, and that we strike out, the two of us, traveling lightly, cross-country, leaving the rest of our party to take the baggage and the horses to a nearby settlement. Now, Mr. Gist was reluctant to do this, showing my lack of experience on the frontier, and the fact that, of course, by this time winter was well into the mountains. But I prevailed upon him, and he finally agreed. We struck out. It was quite an adventure. Well, first, when we reached Merthringtown, there was an Indian who offered to guide us. But as we were traveling, I began to suspect we were going in the wrong direction, and my look at Mr. Gist confirmed his suspicions as well. Then suddenly the Indian pivoted round and fired, fortunately missing us both. We were upon him in a moment, and Mr. Gist wanted to kill him, but, well, I could not. But that meant we had to travel very quickly all that night, for his friends would certainly be upon us. Then we reached the river. We had hoped it would be frozen, but it was not. We had but one axe between the two of us. The weather was freezing. Our hands were very cold as we passed this axe back and forth and began to fashion a raft to cross the river. When we finally did succeed, I was pushing with my pole, and it jammed on some rocks in the river, and the swift current shoved the raft against the pole and threw me into the water. I can tell you this, a bath in the river in December is not pleasant. Fortunately, Mr. Gist was able to steady the raft enough that I clambered back on board, and we made it to a small island in the river. I tell you this, I almost froze to death that night. Mr. Gist did suffer some frostbite, but fortunately, in the morning we discovered that the river between the island and the river bank had frozen, and we were able to cross.